Prescience is a weapon, but like all weapons, it dulls when relied on blindly. Even the sharpest foresight is still bound by data and probability. It does not account for improvisation, evolution, or love. In Chapter 24, foresight meets failure. Kawaki is the anomaly Koji didn't see coming. Jura, a divine algorithm of absorption and instinct, may seem unstoppable, but a new variable emerges, one that doesn't play by predictive logic. Enter Kawaki, reforged, rearmed, and no longer acting alone. This is a chapter where plans evolve, bonds collide, and new data is thrown into chaos. If Chapter 23 was about survival, then Chapter 24 is about divergence. The battle just glitched again? Here's what we can expect based off on verified spoilers on Twitter X. So be advised that these text spoilers I reveal are subject to change upon official release of the manga. Make sure you read the official publication for more accurate context and translation. I won't show any panels in this preview video due to copyright. You can also see my text spoiler summary on my Twitter X profile, and I'll try to fit it in the YouTube description if the platform allows it. So starting with page 1, looks like we're going to have a flashback from chapter 15 of a more extended dialogue where Boruto informed Kawaki of the strategy for the battle against Jura. Mentions once Amato takes off his limiters, then to rush over to help Mitsuki and Sarada. And so page 1 would continue with Boruto warning Kawaki that Jura is the real deal and their combined strength will not be enough to beat him. This suggests that Kawaki was supposed to arrive first. This also validates the line of dialogue from chapter 23 when Boruto calls out Kawaki for being late. And then for page 2, Boruto explains his flying thunder god technique that requires marking it with a pen. The panel shows Kawaki holding a pen shaped like a hidden leaf insignia. And then more on page 2 is that this validates the limitation of his long-distance space-time ninjutsu that requires focused concentration. The plan is not to fight Jura, but to escape with everyone using the Flying Thunder God. Then on page 3, Kawaki acknowledges that the plan is not to have a long-term fight with Jura, but to buy time and escape. And then on page 4, Kawaki absorbs the Tail Beast bomb with his Karma hand that Jura fires. Page 5, Boruto is on his feet holding onto his hand or arm from the Karma resonance. Jura tries to flank attack Kawaki. And then we go to page 6. Jura tries a slashing technique with his belt mark, middle finger claw, but Kawaki would shrink to evade the attack. Then page 7, Kawaki summons he summons like 4 giant cubes that would crash down on Jura. Boruto has to move out of the way when this happens. Jura uses his tail beast scattershot style of attack to partially blow off one of the cubes. Then page 8, Kawaki appears with a surprise attack with his own claw arm that knocks back Jura. And then between pages 9 and 12 in this sequence, looks like Jura will land in between the giant cubes. It's almost like how like a little valley of the cubes as well as the natural landscapes. And Boruto, he floats in midair and watches the fight continue. It's almost like a small valley or alleyway between cubes. And then continuing on with pages 9 through 12, it seems to be all action between Kawaki and Jura. Kawaki uses his chakra rod bow staff to attack, but also deflects Jura's claw-piercing jabs. Then on page 13, Kawaki has more extensive offensive use of the staff that's reminiscent of Jigen's fighting style. Then page 14 shows a panel of Kawaki impaling Jura in the gut with the chakra rod staff. Page 15, the panel reveals a chunk of Jura's right side ribcage missing, as if it got torn off. Followed panels show a sequence of jabs by Kawaki with his staff that smoke Jura quite literally, just by looking at the panel of that attack sequence. Page 16, Jura has his back against a rock formation with visible damage shown. Kawaki walks forward with a cold-hearted approach. Page 17 panel shows a blur of speed by Kawaki as he presses on Jura, then it switches back to Boruto in midair, holding his karma arm that is in full resonance. Page 18, Sumiri and Amato watch the visual footage in real time from Kawaki's point of view. Sumiri has commentary with Amato on the visual damage the Shinju is taking. Then Jura takes out a book from his belt-marked cloak. Page 19, Jura reads the book to confirm the identity of Uzumaki Kawaki. He's surprised by the big shift in power that wasn't there previously. It reminded him of what happened with Himori's big shift in power as referenced in chapters 10 and 11. Page 20, Jura talks extensively about Inoji's sacrifice that triggered Himori's big shift in power, and mentions Sarda's shift in power with a similar scenario. Sumiri watches this from Kawaki's point of view and reacts what Jura mentioned about Sarda. Page 21, Jura has a close-up shot panel with his eyes gouged, well, that one eye that got gouged. He comes to a revised conclusion that while the concept of love is a flaw that only humans possess, he recognizes that it can become a cofactor of self-evolution. He asks for Kawaki's input on the subject. Then on page 22, Kawaki goes all in with a karma hand blast like Dragon Ball Z style blast and calls out Jura as a obnoxious pest. And then pages 23 and 24, the dust from the blast fogs up the scenery. Then Jura reappears with a tree-like throne that he sits on. The tree vines emerge and start to heal Jura's wounds. The Shinju tries to de-escalate Kawaki by offering a more civil conversation. Page 25, Jura has more dialogue. He is surprised that he came to Boruto's rescue. He feels that Kawaki only cares about protecting Naruto. And then page 26, Jura mentioned that he once tried to visit Naruto, which references the events of Chapter 8 of Two Blue Vortex. He thought Naruto might have been deceased, but observes Kawaki's demeanor that confirms that might not be the case. And then page 27, Jura then confirms from Kawaki's reaction that what he says is true, that Naruto is still alive. He circles back to the topic of love and how Naruto was once connected to all the terrible beasts of the past that further conceptualize this. Page 28, Jura then provokes Kawaki with a key line of dialogue. What is love? If I devour him, maybe I'll understand it better. Before Kawaki can do another strike, Boruto stands beside him. And then leads up to page 29. Boruto confirms he's logged on his symbol for a long-distance flying thunder god. Jura then comments that Boruto is about to disappear using his technique and acknowledges that this ends this encounter. Page 30. Kawaki has one last remark to Jura about the concept of love. He states that he doesn't care about love. And then page 31, Kawaki finishes his dialogue with praise on Jura's instinct to target Lord Seventh, but also a sworn pledge to terminate Jura no matter what. Page 32, Jura acknowledges Kawaki's honest response and looks forward to meeting him again. Kawaki is finally done talking. Then page 33, Kawaki flips off Jura with the middle finger. A whole panel dedicated to this action. It was actually quite hilarious when I saw the raw scan of that. It's like, wow, okay. All right. Bit of a throwback from, I think, old Naruto. But anyway, page 34, it switches over to Delta and the rest of the team. Komoharu mentions the hidden leaf insignia pin that lays on the ground. Delta confirms that it's supposed to be laying there and caution to give it space, otherwise he may get stepped on. Page 34 continued, the pin must lay isolated to make it easier for Boruto to sense his chakra for the Flying Thunder God technique. Page 35, Komoharu's face gets stepped on by Kawaki in this gag slapstick comedy moment. Boruto does show an embarrassing facial expression that you can barely see in the panel. Kawaki is surprised by Komoharu laid out on the ground and asks, "What the hell are you doing?" Then page 36, Komoharu is visibly upset that his face was stepped on, and he carries the Thorn Soul bulb in his hand, or what I've been calling the alien potato fruit. Boruto acknowledges Komoharu has the bulb and prepares for the instantaneous movement back to the hidden leaf. And then page 37, a conversation between Ida and Koji about real-time changes of events. Koji acknowledges that Boruto surviving was a good thing, but also has a grim outlook that it might have destroyed a better future. Page 37 continued. Ida questions that it should be a good thing that these events have changed for the better. Page 38, Koji warns that the Shinju Mamushi is moving and she will be targeted soon. Ida reacts to how unfortunate that news is. Page 39, Jura is back in the Ten Tails settlement, or what I've been calling the Ten Tails boardroom meeting, and then he sits along Hidari. And based on the panel, Jura seems to have a blush of flattery. This makes Hidari curious about his expression. Jura responds that Kawaki gave him praise. Page 39 continued with Hidari. He holds a book and mentions a word or phrase that he learned that may match more of Jura's facial expression. And then page 40, Jura is curious about the word or phrase. Hidari reveals, disgusting as hell. Then a side text that describes how Jura had a positive moment with Kawaki's praise, but only for it to be ruined by Hidari. And so that completes the intel on the previews and spoilers for this chapter. As I mentioned earlier, be advised that this is all subject to change upon official release of the manga, so just make sure you read the official publication for more accurate context. And so now this leads to my most well-known segment in my previous preview and review videos. I'm going to do a tactical segment, tactical briefing of Kawaki versus Jura. And so just to recap, using a side-by-side comparison between Kawaki and Shinju Jura, focusing on abilities, power sources, and tactical behavior. This will help evaluate the potential outcomes of the 1v1 battle in Chapter 24, and even for future chapters when they come. And so just break it down as quickly as possible. The text is probably going to be small, so if you have a bigger screen, you'll probably be able to read this, but I'm just going to read it for you real quickly. So to recap, Kawaki is a modified vessel, a Karma wielder, and very much an adaptive combatant. His power source, Karma Seal from Ashiki's remains, grants access to Asuki level chakra, dimensional warping potential, and rapid enhancements. And then he has the scientific ninja tools. His body is heavily modified with advanced weaponry. He has that chakra karma blast that kind of gives you a feeling of Dragon Ball Z type of feels there. And of course he has enhanced durability, and he can summon chakra rods. And then he has the Sukuna Kona. I always mispronounce this, so if I butchered it, I'm sorry. So high-level Dujutsu ability that allows him to shrink himself or objects instantaneously. And then the Daidu Kuten space-time storage dimension used in synergy with Senokuna Kona. And then Kawaki's combat style, he's efficient and precise. He favors overwhelming force through surprise attacks. And I'll explain that a little bit more in this next segment after Jura. So his defensive reflexes for Kawaki, good at dodging, using terrain and ability-based counters. He has a calculated brutality, doesn't hesitate to kill or maim, very mission-focused. If anything, Kawaki is quite a ninja, despite him saying in Chapter 1 or Episode 1 of Boruto that the ninja world or shinobi ways are over. He still sure acts much like a shinobi, despite that comment from that first chapter or first episode. And then the known limitations is the karma drain. Using Otsutsuki powers may have diminishing returns if overused. He has unpredictable emotions. The brotherly rivalry with Boruto could disrupt long-term strategy. And then the adaptation delay doesn't adapt mid-fight as quickly as Boruto, relies on strength and decisive tactics. And then just to recap, Shinju Jura, he is a divine tree mutation, a synchronization of nature, to really sum it up. With his Shinju physiology, he's derived from the Ten Tails and divine tree biology. Regenerative abilities are enhanced beyond human limits. Nature Sync appears to be using natural energy as a buffer against chakra-based attacks like the Rasengan Yuzuhiko, which might have failed due to grounding. I did explain that in one of my previous chapter reviews and previews. I believe just the last 2 chapters prior to this one. And then Jura, he has the Tail Beast Bomb. He has his traditional artillery-style weapon, but he can also morph it into shrapnel scattershot rounds for a more diverse range of attack. And then he has high durability, took a direct Rasengan Yuzuko and Purple Lightning, and still got up to fight again. And for Jura's combat style, his tactical growth learns and adapts to the opponent's patterns quickly. He has environmental control. His body may ground or cancel chakra turbulence by natural energy sync. At least that's what I can theorize based off of his battle with Boruto in the previous chapters. And then unemotional execution. He doesn't waste energy. He's efficient, like a combat AI synced with nature. Now his no limitations. Not immune to pain, Boruto cutting his foot and shocking him proves damage can register. Psychic vulnerability, Koji couldn't foresee Kawaki, meaning Jura's sync might be affected by variables he can't read. And then there's an adaptation gap. His shift from sniping to widespread bombardment suggests he's reactive, not proactive. Meaning that he doesn't really follow his shots. He doesn't really follow the judge of distance of a moving target. But then again, ask anybody who's actually ever used a sniper rifle in the military, they could probably tell you that, shooting a moving target is no easy thing. Whether it's with a semi-automatic rifle or a bolt-action sniper, it's no easy thing to do. It takes an incredible amount of skill to snipe even a still static target, let alone if it's moving. And now for an extension of the tactical briefing, using Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do to analyze the methods of attack for both characters in this chapter. So let's break them down, not just as martial arts philosophy, but as battlefield tactics in this fight. So 1, there is a single direct attack. Jura uses this with his claw jabs and the focus belt slash strikes that has precision, lethality, and is very instinctual. Kawaki mirrors this through his chakra rod thrusts, like the gut jab, gut stab, and final impalements. Overall analysis, both fighters use the single direct attack for kill confirmations, but Kawaki times it after controlling space and rhythm. Jura opens up with it. Kawaki is more of a finisher with this method of attack. Then there's attack by combination. Jura's rapid claw flurries and tail beast scatter shots create disruption. Kawaki's staff assault blends range, parry, jab, and crush and impact, highly reminiscent of Jigen's attack chaining style. Overall analysis, Kawaki has adapted Jigen's attack by combination into a Jeet Kune Do style with short, sharp, and improvisational attacks. And then there is progressive indirect attack. Jura transitions from sniping to a more erratic patterns like changing angles mid-blast. And Kawaki, he draws Jura into thinking he's retreating when he uses that shrink ability, only to reappear for a strike or baits an attack to land a cube or rod impalement. So overall, Kawaki's control of misdirection through spatial thinking through Senkanakona is a textbook definition of progressive indirect attack, a true vent into pressure. Then number 4, the hand immobilization attack, or just an immobilization attack just as a general whole. Jura attempts this when grabbing or lashing out to restrain Boruto, or Kawaki mid-technique. Kawaki breaks control with his Sekunakona, nullifying any grab attempt and turning it into opportunity. Overall analysis, Kawaki redefines the whole immobilization attack by denying it with his shrink ability. He doesn't immobilize hands, he removes them from play entirely. And then finally, number 5, attack by drawing. Jura draws reactions with psychological pressure using books, philosophy, and deliberate gaps in dialogue. Kawaki uses a delayed entry, forcing Jura to drop focus from Boruto. Overall analysis, this chapter is attack by drawing. In meta form, Boruto drew Jura into the fray of battle, not really to gain victory, but mainly to buy time and cause a distraction. And then Boruto has Jura in position, then that's where Kawaki strikes, as he did in the last chapter with that chakra rod impalement through the back of the head of Jura. And so overall, Kawaki's evolution is clear. He doesn't just hit harder, he thinks faster, adapts deeper, bites in layers. Jura still has the upper hand in raw absorption and regeneration, but his instincts are now reacting to new information presented to him. So to close this out, in the world of Shinobi, power alone never determines the outcome. It's the timing of intervention, the courage to adapt, and the wisdom to retreat. Chapter 24 was never about a winner. It was about recognizing a losing scenario, engineering survival. Boruto understood this. Kawaki understood this. Koji perhaps did not, or maybe misinterpreted it differently. Prescience isn't prophecy, it's pattern recognition. However, when the pattern breaks, like Kawaki did, even the clearest vision becomes blind. The battlefield has changed again. Love, once seen as weakness, may now be evolution's spark. The Sentinel briefing has concluded. Prepare for the official chapter release of Chapter 24 of Two Blue Vortex that's coming. So be ready for what comes next.